Well, hey everyone, it's Nate here with episode 282 of the Vinyl Guide. This is part 2 of our interview with Dischord Records founder Ian MacKaye. Now, if you haven't yet heard part 1, episode 281, you probably want to go back and listen to that and get it all in perspective. Ian and I are covering a ton of topics, from record collecting to the early Dischord releases, the history of Dischord House, the future of the Dischord archive, some of the shenanigans from his life's journey, and more. Whether you're a record nerd or not, I think you're going to enjoy these conversations. Now, everyone, listen up for a moment because I need to let you know that we are running up against a deadline here. The final day to be able to pre-order your copy of the first 6 Dischord Records box set is June 11th, 2021, and it's only available at boxset.dischord.com. Don't show up at the website on June 12th. You won't be able to pre-order, and you will not get a copy. It's $50 for the box set, which I reckon is a great deal. Any other record label would have likely charged twice that price. So if you're international like I am, and the shipping to you seems a bit high, well, look, that's just what it costs to send something these days. I think of it this way. Any other record label would have charged $100, maybe more for the box set. So if I consider the shipping on top of the $50, it's still a great deal. In fact, I'm ordering an extra just in case. The first 6 Dischord Records box set, $50 plus shipping, and only available through June 11 at boxset.dischord.com. And by the way, do me a favor, if you enjoy our podcast and what we do here on the Vinyl Guide, hit subscribe on your podcast app and enjoy our back catalog of episodes. We've got a heap of great guests and interviews over the years. I mean, so many members of Black Flag, including Henry Rollins, Keith Morris, Chuck Dukowski, Billy Stevenson. Even Spot the producer joined us to talk records and memories of years gone by. We've also had on members of Bad Brains, Mr. Bungle, Bad Religion, Wire, Melvin, Sex Pistols, Kraftwerk. They've all come on the Vinyl Guide, and we all talk records, music stories, and more. So please subscribe to the Vinyl Guide podcast and enjoy. All right, let's cut to the chase. Let's get to part 2 of our conversation with Mr. Ian MacKaye. Let's talk a little bit about records. So the records that you had as a young man, and again, understanding that you tend to save quite a bit throughout your life. Do you still have those records from your youth?
I have many of them. And I have to say, I'm not a record collector. Mm-hmm. I have a lot of records, but I'm not a collector. Like if we go buy records, like, oh, I've never always wanted this pressing, I'm going to spend this money. I don't do that.
Right.
Like I'm the guy who like found some random record. Henry's like, where'd you get that? I'm like, oh, I don't know. I picked it up at some like wherever. And he's like, I think it's worth a fortune. I don't know. I don't care. I don't really sell records either. So I just like the records. The earliest record, and I've talked about this before, but my parents had a Grundig phonograph. It was like a old turntable with like a stereo, and had like a radio, a turntable, and then the speakers in the base of this piece of furniture. Mm-hmm. And we had singles, and there was one particular single which was Floyd Kramer's Last Dance. God damn it, I always get the two, but it's Floyd Kramer. I think it's Last. Mm-hmm. It's an instrumental. That's part of the problem, but it's a piano instrumental. It's a great song. Last Dance, one of the two. But I would listen to that record over and over and over and over and over. I was completely obsessed with that record as a kid, probably like 4 years old or 5 years old. You found it on there?
I'm looking at it, looking for it right now. Last Date, yeah,
okay. So that was the first record I really remember listening to. Like I was obsessed with that record. And then I started thinking I saw probably the Beatles cartoon on television. Mm-hmm. Probably saw that, and I was aware of the Beatles. But then I remember my parents had a friend who had a house up in Long Island, and we visited him, and he had like Beatles records, and he had smash hits, Jimi Hendrix.
Yep.
And I heard Hey Joe, and my brain just exploded. I became so obsessed with that record. I didn't own it, but I just listened when I was at that house. I'd listen to that thing over and over and over. Then there were these hippie kids who lived on Beecher Street. I lived at 3819 Beecher, and then there was a house on the corner, which would have been 3811, I think, is the address. It's a corner house, and a bunch of hippie kids who were, I think, American University students all lived together there. They had painted the walls had suns painted on them, and it was very, they were very hippie. But they were great. I love these people, and they were so nice to me. I was 8, 9, 10 years old, and I'd go to hang out with them. And there was they all had their own record collection. There's a group house, so they all had their own boxes of records. Mm-hmm. And I would go look to their records. And there was this one woman had a crate, like a milk crate kind of thing filled with records, which I couldn't believe any one person could have that many records. And I remember she said to me, sometimes I go, this is really heavy. She goes, yeah, sometimes I put it in front of my door when I'm doing things I don't want people to walk in on. And though I didn't know what exactly she was referring to, I really liked the idea that there were things you might do behind a door that you don't want people to walk in on. So I would look through her record collection, and I can remember, for instance, seeing James Gang Thirds, that record. Can you picture it? It's a cover there on the motorcycles in the back.
Yep,
and
that's right.
Greatest cover. And then there's Jefferson Airplane record. I think what's the one that has the peanut butter and jelly sandwich gatefold? Is that Volunteers?
I don't know.
I think it's Volunteers. But all those really classic late 60s, early 70s covers, mostly late 60s, I guess, at that point. Really inventive. Alice Cooper's, do you remember the School's Out record? The desk. Do you ever see that?
Yep. It
so those
open.
Kind of that era, or the Stones had the octagon.
The cutouts on all the corners. Yeah.
So those record covers just blew my mind, and mostly each record represented like some radical spiritual thinking, something like information inside. I didn't get to listen to most of those records. I just stare at them. But then I started slowly getting records. The first record I think I ever got, this may be apocryphal, but I think the first record I remember acquiring, I did not buy. I shoplifted it, and it was The Who's Summertime Blues, I think live at Woodstock, but it may have been from live at Leeds, actually, now that I think of it. It was on a 7-inch, and there was a 5 and dime Murphy's, GC Murphy's here in Washington, D.C., and they had a weird little selection of singles, and I didn't have any money, and I was like, I got to have this record, and I put it under my arm. And I was on a little bit of a spree with these other kids stealing bubblegum balls and stupid things you steal when you're 8 or 9 years old or 10 years old. And I remember we had gotten some stuff from Murphy's, and we went to a toy store and we were stealing other dumb things, and the other kid got caught because he was walking out with something hanging out of his pocket like a moron. So then the chase was on, because we were like a little crew of kids, and so I was being chased by this one guy from the store. And I ran into a People's Pharmacy, and I had so much stuff in my pockets, and I was just throwing all the stuff out of my pockets because I didn't want to get caught. And again, we're talking about like a Matchbox car, just the dumbest little, because there all had to be small things that would fit in your pocket anyway. But he caught me, and at that point, I had basically gotten rid of everything except for the record, which I had under my arm. I didn't take the record from his store, but I still had it. And as far as I was concerned, I could go to jail. And he said, "Oh, something wrong with your arm?" I go, "No." I was squeezing it, my left arm squeezing against my side to hold the record up. I go, "No." And he wrenched my arm up to see if something would drop out. Luckily, I had been sweating, and the record stuck to my chest. So somewhere, I feel like I would still have that record, and I can't find it. So that makes me sad. That's a record I think I would still have. That's the first record I remember acquiring. But then after that, I just started buying, Beatles records, like the White Album or Let It Be, Abbey Road. These were always hugely important records for me. The Jimi Hendrix records, hugely important. Janis Joplin, hugely important. Woodstock, I bought that triple Woodstock, I think I bought 3 copies of it. I wear that thing out. I listen to it so much, just get totally scratched up.
It's interesting. Some of the records you just pointed out have like the gatefold covers. You remember the octagon cuts,
Yeah.
which I guess makes me think that those must have been, the physical items must have been very influential when you started making your own records,
of course,
and to start creating them.
I mean, the thing about punk, which was, then the 70s, what happened in the 70s is that kind of really super kind of creative and radical. There's a lot of, I felt like a lot of the packaging of records in the late 60s was super powerful. There's so much interesting stuff to think about, and I mean, even the White Album, it's so badass, the cover, just pure white. And then you have this very, like the poster inside of it had so much weird photos, and and for a kid, I really puzzled over that stuff, and then by the mid 70s, and I think it's true. You ever read the book called Mansion on the Hill? Story about the rock industry. It's a fascinating book. And the person who wrote it, whose name I can't think of, unfortunately, at the moment, he posits that the record that really changed everything was Phantom Comes Alive. Because that record sold many, many, many millions of records. And it generated so much money that it woke up the multinationals. Because prior to that, they didn't pay attention. And that's when they got in the game. And then you had Thriller, and you had Springsteen's records and Prince's records. These things were selling unbelievable amounts for so much money. And then I think at that point, the record industry really corporatized in a way where the covers were not, I feel like in the beginning, covers were like, you want to get attention, you want to do something original, and that was what you would draw attention. People would be attracted to the covers. But then I think in the mid 70s, the thinking was you don't want to make anything offensive. Like you want, you make a record that's like the covers are all sort of within the boundaries of because
you wanted every store to stock it. It was kind of a numbers game at that point.
Right.
Okay.
So, and this is really, when you think about the music was the same. Like the music was pretty toothless too. Like there was not a lot of really dangerous music coming out in the late 70s. But if you listen to the late 60s, there's a lot of really not dangerous, like they're going to cut you, but dangerous, like it might make you think about something, right? Mm-hmm. And I think that the late 70s, part of what was so distressing for me, like I wanted to be in bands from like being a kid, I wanted to be in a band. But when I looked at the rock and roll world, I couldn't make any sense. It seemed completely out of reach. It seemed it's like when you look at, the House of Windsor, like the British, the royalty, and you're like, well, that's their lives, and I could never do that. That's what it felt like to me with music. Like, I couldn't even play guitar. How would I even having to do with that? That business is so removed from a kid in Washington, D.C. But also, it was so big. Everything was so big. It was all top 40 stuff. I didn't know about anything but top 40. I didn't know anything else existed. And I think that I gave up on the idea, and I became a skateboarder. Well, I know that. I don't think that. I know I did that. I became a skateboarder. And that's how, Henry and I were skateboarders. We skated together all through the 70s. And Henry and I went to California in 1978 to go skateboarding on a bus. We took a bus by ourselves. I was 16 and he was 17, and we went to California to go skateboarding. We spent 7 days or 8 days on buses. Crazy. But then punk comes along, and suddenly I was like, this I can do. The first band I saw was the Cramps. Mm-hmm. And a lot of their songs are played on one string. I can play one string. I can do that. And it was also the greatest show of all time in my, that Cramp show February 3rd, 1979, the Hall of Nations at Georgetown University. That show was just mind blowing how great that was. Then I saw the Clash 2 weeks later. That was Henry's first show, the Clash at Ontario Theatre. I think it was February 15th. And I remember thinking, this is great. But I also remember thinking, like, this is not punk. Right. This is rock and roll. They had like a backdrop, they had lighting, and it was like the whole production was very rock. Mm-hmm. Whereas the Cramps were just playing in this hall with just like white lights. and then complete pandemonium. So visceral. No, like even though the Cramps have like a presentation, they're very, they're dressed like the Munsters or something. You believed that that's how they went around town.
Is that the show where Lex just threw up on the stage?
Yes, yes, it is.
Okay.
Yeah, that was insane. Completely insane. Now, Henry, prior to that, Henry and I, we were huge Ted Nugent fans, Double Live Gonzo era.
Mm-hmm.
So we saw Nugent 3 times. And those shows were also pretty terrifying. There was some pretty wild. He was wild. But you were always sitting far away, and it was a spectacle that you were witnessing.
Right.
Whereas the Cramps was a spectacle that you were participating in. There was no question about it. That the show is made up of the band and the audience.
So back to these first 6 Dischord records.
Right.
It seems to me, and correct me if you think differently, but they're almost like mini albums, to the point where you had a lot of songs on there. You even chose the record format, the small spindle hole rather than the big one, so you could.
That's true.
I'm assuming so you could put more text on. Was that?
No, that's interesting. No, okay. No. I think that was because, well, I should say that when we got into punk, like obviously the Sex Pistols were, they were a major label band, but they were so mind blowing. Mm-hmm. Like just at the time was so like what I saw was like this clarion, like I heard like a clarion call, like self-definition, that's what self-define. But then I started looking into, we started going out to these, what we used to call import shops or import stores. They were basically independent record stores. They got records to distributors who imported records from other countries. So that's when we started really getting into like this British the punk scene stuff there. You start finding bands like the Lurkers and the UK Subs and the Damned and all those singles were small hole, right? Because the British 45s are small hole. Only American jukeboxing were big hole.
Right.
And I suspected that big hole was because of the jukebox. That's why they had it, because it was easier for the record to drop out of the machine and to spindle. If it had a bigger hole, it was an easier thing to center onto the turntable.
Right.
I don't know this. I'm just thinking that at this very moment. Whereas British 45s, everywhere else was just small holes because they weren't jukebox dependent like Americans were. But the more, every time we go up to Yesterday and Today Records in Rockville, which is our sort of main shop, and they always have a box of like new records, and it was $1 each or $2 each. And Henry and I would just go through and just grab records, and we'd always buy, like I'd buy like one record and he'd buy the other record, so we could then trade. Of course, then it meant that later on we're like, shit, I don't own that, you own that, but we wanted to cover as much ground as possible, right? So hearing, and then starting to follow it down and following these smaller and smaller bands, it was just so incredible. It was like a universe of music. Which I'm still discovering to this day. Music is once, I stopped eating meat and all that kind of stuff in the mid 80s. And when I stopped that, I started to understand food in a way that I'd never thought about it before. It's the first time I started to really understand, like I started to really love food is when I stopped eating what was just being proffered at all times. With music, as much as I love music, it was when I got into punk and turned off that radio, I grew to love music in a way that a day hasn't gone by where I haven't thought about music since then, like really thought about it. And it was a profound turning for me, like getting into the underground. And when I say I turned the radio off, I mean it. I don't know anything about top 40. I know the names of the bands, but I don't know any of the songs. And I used to say to people like a band like Guns N' Roses. I know Welcome to the Jungle. That song I can recognize. I don't know any of the other songs. Not because I think they're bad. I don't have an opinion about them. It's not that. It's that literally, why would I listen to what was being foisted on me when I could choose? Like, why would I go to McDonald's and get that food because it's the most convenient? When if I go down the street and go to like this like natural food joint, I might discover some really fascinating meal that didn't know even existed.
Right.
Why go to the corporate joint? So that's for me. I thought like if I'm going to study music, I'm just not going to go to the place where the thing that everyone else is listening to. Now, there's some hip hop stuff that I've been interested in, especially early hip hop that became top 40, but it was such a revolutionary form. It was a little bit like rock and roll in its early days.
Mm-hmm.
But for the most part, I just don't know. Like, I don't know. I know.
You don't know Cardi B. You don't know what WAP stands for.
No. Yeah, but I know the names. I know Cardi B, of course. I know the names, and I read, so I know all this stuff. So I think that the records. So then we also we got really interested in what was happening in Los Angeles because of the Dickies. They were the first band that I came across from I think the first band from Los Angeles
when you took the bus out there with Henry, did you guys see any punk rock? Did you?
No.
Were you already into it?
No,
okay.
no. Okay. We were not. We were Nugent all the way. Nugent and Van Halen. I remember hearing Van Halen for the first time when we were out there. We're like, wow, what's that? And then we saw Van Halen open for Nugent, and actually kind of humiliated him that night. They were amazing.
Yeah.
That was the only time we saw him 3 times, and that time they took the night that night.
They were a force to be reckoned with back then.
Wow. But that would have been 78 or 79,
okay.
I think. But then I got into punk in 79. We both got into punk in 79. In the summer of 79, my sister, my grandparents have a house in Connecticut near New Haven, and the Ramones were playing in a bar in New Haven. And my sister Katie was like, we should go see the Ramones. I was like, yeah. Like, I didn't really like the Ramones that much at the time. I remember thinking they were kind of comic booky, and I was not that into them. But it's 15 miles away. Might as well go see them. Well, we ended up having to drive like an hour and a half south to pick up some friends of hers. And then we drove back to New Haven. And one of the friends, this guy who I don't know who this guy is, he's just from like a boyfriend of the friend of hers, or I don't know, but he was kind of punk or punkish and mysterious. And he had a cassette tape that he was playing, and each song that played was a different band. And I had made plenty of tapes, but I'd always taken a 60-minute tape and you put side A on side A and side B on side B. It never occurred to me to make a compilation tape, right? This is the first time I'd ever come across a tape that had a lot of different songs on it. And each one was great. It was like crazy punk stuff I'd never heard. And I was like, what is this? And he handed me back the case, and the case, he had taken the Sunday comics and made a cover. And then on the inside, a piece of paper with all the song titles written down, which I had never seen before, a handmade case cover. It was completely revolutionary for me. I was amazed. And then the song that I remember hearing was the Banana Splits theme by the Dickies, the sped up version of the children's TV show theme. And I go, what is this? He goes, this is the Dickies. And I was looking at the thing. It had I think the Banana Splits theme, and also the maybe Sound of Silence they did a version of that. And they did Silent Night too, but all sped up, done crazy. So I knew who the Dickies were. And then Henry and I shortly after, I went to a record store, and I came across the Dickies 10-inch, first record, a 10-inch on A&M, and white vinyl. And at that point, because I didn't know anything about punk at all, I had no knowledge. I was not educated. My criteria was no keyboards. I was trying to stay away from progressive stuff. I wanted punky stuff. I wanted like really hard rock. So I was like, whatever it is, no keyboards, right? That's new wave. I want punk. I want hard stuff. But the Dickies had keyboards. Chuck Wagon was playing keyboards. And Henry will tell this story too. I sat there for probably 45 minutes, turning it over, thinking, I don't know, this. And I finally bought it. Boy, am I glad I did. Because that's when we realized, oh shit, there's something going on in LA that's for real. And then we started picking up, I think we got the Dills. It's 198 Seconds of the Dills. Is that what it's called? It's like one of the greatest records ever. Like that record. And there's Class War with Mr. Big on the B-side. Well, anyway, it's on this label called Danger House. And Danger House So then we went back up and we found, I think, a record by a band called the Deadbeats, Kill the Hippies. That was on Danger House. And then there was this record, the X had a record, I think Adult Books maybe, I think. And the Randoms and ABCD and Controllers. Anyway, every Danger House record was perfect. These little 7 inches, beautiful graphics, all from LA or from the West Coast. It really sparked my imagination. So that was really like, I started to like, that's a cool label. Like that's the coolest label for me because they just had, every record was so cool. Now the Teen Idols, we played from December of 79 till November of 80. And we had decided to break up. Jory, the guitar player, was going to quit. So we were going to break up. We knew we were going to break up at the end of August, but we had a few last shows. So we saved all the money that we had ever made. We didn't split the money up. We just bought Cokes and maybe get some guitar strings or something. That's about it. So we had about $800 in the cigar box. So when we broke up, we still had the money, and we had made a demo at Inner Ear Studios. We first went to Inner Ear Studios, Don Zentera's studio here in Arlington, in August of 80. So when we decided to break up, we thought, well, we can split the money up and just make cassette copies, or we can use the money to make a document of the band. Nobody else was going to put this record out. Like, who's going to put out a teenage punk band from DC that was like a little schlubby and we're also broken up? There's just no market for that. But for us, it was important. So we thought, we're going to make a document of that. Now, at the time, to make a record was kind of thought of a little bit like a sellout, because punk bands are about playing shows and dancing. That's what you're about. So when you make a record, what you're doing is you're trying to you're commodifying something that is about the moment. And in theory, you sell the record so you get money back. So we were really taking pains to say that we're not doing this to make money. We're doing this because we want to make a document. We want to make this. We want to document something that was important to us, it's like a yearbook at school. Yeah. So we said any money we make from this record will all go back into putting out another record from a local band. We're not going to take any money for ourselves. The Teen Idols had recorded 8 songs or 7 songs. And we could have put out a 2-song 7-inch, but then the other 6 songs or whatever would have just moldered away somewhere else. But our songs are 38 seconds long. So why not put them all on there?
Sure.
It's short song. Why not? Just get it. We had more songs we never recorded, which I think is too bad. There's about another half dozen songs we never recorded. But I think Jeff and I are really committed to this idea of make it all available, get it out there. So then Henry he started singing for a band called SOA, where he formed the SOA with these guys. And he was so eager to have a record, and he had money because he worked at he was a manager of the ice cream store. She said, I'm going to put out my own record. So he did a 10-song SOA record on Dischord. But he said all the money from that just goes back into the project. So now we have 2 records, and then we did the Minor Threat one, and all the money came back. We did 8 songs. So the idea was whatever you recorded, just if you could fit it on, you had 5 minutes aside. If you could get it on there, do it. So it wasn't a but it's like value for money. You want people to hear the songs. Sure. Now, what good is it if you have, if you have a song like, I Drink Milk, but it's just on a cassette sitting in your room. Right. That's no good. Put it on a record.
Now, when you had that first 1,000 Teen Idols records pressed up, 1,000, right? How did you sell them originally? How did they get out there? I imagine they probably sat in boxes for many years, yeah?
No, not many years, no. Well, first off, we had to make the records, and we had no idea how to make the records whatsoever. Skip Groff, who ran Yesterday and Today Records, he had a label called Limp, which was sort of kind of adjunct to Stiff, and he had put out records, and he actually took us to the studio, Inner Ear. He went into the session. He produced those early records. So we asked him, how do you make a record? And he goes, well, it's just send a tape and a check deposit to this place in Nashville called Nashville Record Productions, and they'll take your tape and put it into vinyl and send you back however many you want. So we ordered 1,000. I think that was the minimum order at the time, actually. So then to figure out the sleeves, we took an English picture sleeve that we liked and we pulled it open, like undid the glue, and we laid that on an 11 by 14 piece of paper, and we just sketched around it. And then Jeff put the graphics in that little thing. And then we took that to a print store and said, can we have 1,000 of this 11 by 14 piece of paper? So then we got back 1,000 11 by 14 pieces of paper that we then took scissors and we cut out each one, following the line we had drawn with scissors. And we did that for the first, I think, first 10,000 records Dischord made. We handmade the records.
Hand cut them all.
Hand cut them with scissors and glued, folded and glued, and inserted the lyric sheets. Did them all. Wow. We didn't know there was another way to do it. We just did. We're from Washington D.C. We had no idea that there was a company that would do that.
You get the whole band sitting around in front of the television, just
everybody, eating pizza, drinking Cokes, and not just the band, but all the punks. Like people, we had so many folding parties. They just come to the house and come to Dischord, and we just all sit there and watch TV, and just drink Cokes and make records all night. That's the record industry, making records for real. So the first record we did 1,000 of, but the thing was, it came out in December of 1980, and Minor Threat had just played our first show in December. So I think December 12th of 1980. So when we started playing shows, we would sell Teen Idol singles, and Minor Threat people were in, like, they liked that band, but we just sent it out, and people just kept, all of a sudden stores were just ordering it. We sold them for $1 each, and we were selling them to kids it was $2.50 postpaid if you bought the single from us. And that was the other thing. We put a lot of emphasis on mail order, because we felt like that was the best way to act as a governor over the prices. Like, we didn't tell people not to pay more than. We said available from us for $2.50 postpaid. And the idea was to start creating a dialogue with people in other parts of the country. And so famously, do you remember Touch and Go magazine?
Yes.
Are you familiar with that?
Tesco.
So Tesco, Tesco V and Dave Stimson. And so we sent them a Teen Idols record. And we didn't think about how to send records at the time. It was just in a manila envelope, and it got broken, of course, because it was just no protection. But they got it, and they thought the cover was so cool that they're like, we got to hear this record. So they taped the shattered vinyl together and put the needle on, and it didn't play, but what they could hear made them write us a letter like, can we get another copy? Can we buy you a copy? And so I have early letters from them asking about the record, but they were one of the first people to write about us. And we just knew about them because I'd gone to a record store, and I saw a bunch of fanzines on a rack, and there was one with, I think, Penelope from the Avengers. And we're like, whoa, like that's these. And we looked through and they liked a lot of the same bands we liked. They were interested in West Coast punk. So we sent it to them. We sent it to Flipside, Boston Rock, and then we could, in the magazines, just got the word out. But people just got into it. And we sold the first 1,000, and we sold another 1,000 within a year.
It seems every time you guys went to do a repress, you changed a little something on the record. Was that important?
I think it's just our nature to do a little. I mean, not in later years, obviously, when things became more mechanized, we don't do it so much. But in the beginning, it was fun. Like with the first SOA pressing, of course, Henry was in the band. But the second pressing, Henry had gone off to sing for Black Flag. So in the second pressing, you can see we drew Black
the bars
Flag on his arm. Yeah, right, exactly. And there's things kind of coming and going, and there was some of it had to do with correcting. There's mistakes on earlier pressings, and we would correct it. Sometimes there's a joke. We just made jokes. There's, for instance, one thing that's, if you, on the inside of the Minor Threat first 7-inch, on the flap, there's actually, I think it says Flex Your Head written on there. It's on the inside, glued in. You can't see it.
Oh.
If you open it up, you see it says Flex Your Head.
I think on Out of Step, there was a message.
In the Matrix.
Jeff plus... I'm trying to think of the one.
Is it in the Matrix? You mean the record?
No, it's in the glue strip. Oh, sorry, it's the glue strip of Salad Days. Jeff plus Sarah.
Yeah. Oh yeah, Sarah. Yeah. I didn't know about that. I didn't find out until years later. Oh, I was angry with him about that. I was so furious with him about that because the Salad Days record was a funny one because actually, when My Threat broke up, we broke up, and then Jeff, we kind of ended the band in November of '83, but we had never recorded Salad Days or Stumped or Good Guys, and Jeff really wanted to record, and I didn't want to record because we had broken up. But he kind of we argued all the time, and then I finally said, okay, we'll go document it but I'm not putting it out. He's like, no, just to document it. So once you record it, then he's like, a couple years later, he's like, we got to put it out. And I was like, God, just fine, put it out, but I don't want to be involved with it. So he did that without telling me. And it wasn't for probably 15 years. And then at some point I came across it and I was like, what the fuck? That was his girlfriend at the time I was shocked that he did that. But it's also Jeff. That's the way, he does stuff like that. We also used to write, in the folding parties, we used to write stuff on the lyric sheets. Like there's all these messages. We just write things on the lyrics. Each lyric sheet had different things written on it.
I've seen a website that has different things, different comments and whatnot.
And the people really wanted to get into insider baseball. They tried to figure out who wrote what. Because, my brother was there, Chris Ball was there, me, Jeff, other people. Different people would write different things. Cynthia Connolly, Anna Connolly, whoever was working on it, we just would just jot stuff down. And we did we definitely changed things up. The singles were great. That was I loved making records like that. That was the end of that.
So I'll bring it back to this first 6, 7-inch records. And again, Ian, thank you so much for spending extra time here. I'd love to have you back on because there's a whole heap of stuff we're not even covering.
Well, I'd be happy to come back. No problem.
Okay. So on this package, again, people can order up to June 11th.
Correct.
And then after that, the door shuts. Those that are in get a copy. Those who aren't, well, they got to deal with the consequences. How are you telling which versions to be able to put out? Like, for instance, SOA. Will Henry's arm have the black flag?
First pressing. All first pressing.
Okay. Yeah, is there anything being changed on it? So the one thing I saw was on I think on the copyright 1981, and then it has 2020 or 2021.
Of course. Yeah.
Other than those little tiny things, are there any other changes?
Well, the covers are going to be different because first off, we're not hand making them. Yeah, they're machine made, and the reproduction will be. I mean, it's been actually a bit of an issue. It's funny. Amy, my partner, for years she was a decorative painter. She did like really high end decorative painting, but she also would paint, for instance, television news sets. So she would do the backdrops, and at some point, her company got called back in to repaint the set because they had just gotten high def cameras. When you had the high def cameras, all of a sudden you could see all the
imperfections.
Perfections. So they had to repaint it for that reason. And then she told me at the time that the anchors were really upset because you could also see all the imperfections on their faces. But prior to that, you would never see. And so they had to design, this is so incredible, a screen, like a filter to put in front of the camera to soften the focus so you wouldn't see the zits on the anchors, right? That's how high def. So in the same way, the reason I bring this up is that we could show like the absolutely raw, perfect high def cover, but it didn't look right. It looks weird to be that, because like it was not, we never would have put it out that way anyway. It was like sort of the gelling that happened when you made the photocopy or whatever, how the printing process was, it kind of smeared it together. So that's been really interesting. So they will look a little different because they're so clear, but we did try to soften it, so it doesn't look pornographic in that sense, but it's a new printing, but we put the dates on there. We don't want people to think, we're not trying to pass these off as originals, but these are basically as original as you're going to get, unless you want to go back and spend too much money. As I said, I'm not a collector, so I'm not that interested in that part of it. Like people say, what do you think about the fact that people sell your records, for $1,000 or $2,000. And I think like it's a phenomenon, but it's just a piece of plastic. It's like stamp collectors. Like, why would a 5-cent stamp be worth, $100,000? It's a piece of paper. What is the value? That it's just about people's wants, and I can't control that. So I think that there's that. And I think the other thing that I did hear some people talking about, they're dubious about the remastered aspect of it. They're like a little worried about the remastering. And I wonder if maybe those people are confused with remixing, because remastering and remixing are different things.
Right.
I'm also dubious about remixing. And when bands remix stuff, when they do a new mix for something, it usually does not work. In fact, I'd say it doesn't work almost always. Remastering, on the other hand, is necessary, because the original mastering, the plates that generated those, like the original acetate, the metal stampers, all those things, they are long gone. So we have to, and we've always remastered stuff. The point we are saying is that we didn't remaster it we didn't do a needle drop. We didn't record a record and then use that to make a record. We remastered from the original tapes. So that's why we said remastered. But then I've read some people saying like, oh, well, that means I don't like that. It's remastered. We had to remaster it. That's the way it is.
Yeah. Well, I would imagine that any finicky collector would get this 2021 version next to the 1980 version. It'll sound night and day, because there would be, the materials, the process, probably the pressing plant that you're using is a little bit more upgraded now.
I mean, those early records were being mastered by a country music guy. It's just a Nashville record production. I remember he's just some guy who never listened to punk ever. He just does country music, and we didn't know that there was a separate. We just thought you send it to the record plant, and they send back vinyl. We didn't understand what would happen at the record plant. We just sent the tape, and you get vinyl back. And it wasn't until years later that we started to understand that there was this a whole other process that you could do in other places. So the guy that mastered our records, the original records, was just some dude that worked in Nashville record productions. And he mostly did country. We went there in 1983. Minor Threat stopped by National Record Production, and we went and saw the mastering. And the guy, I think he's a genius. The guy was great, but he was just some dude who worked in a country music pressing plant. And I love the idea. He must have been tickled pink when he got this record. Like, yeah, there's 8 songs, and you need to put stripes. You had to put bands for each of the songs. It must have blown his mind. But he was up for the challenge, because he was a workaday guy. Yeah. He's like, all right, let's do it. Super cool. So this process it's interesting. Like and I don't really A/B them. I assume they sound about the same, but I don't know. I can't make it sound like it was. I can just make it sound like it is, and try to make it. So I listen to test pressings. They sound good. I'm happy.
I would imagine they would absolutely best the 1980 versions, just because of the materials and the process of things involved.
I don't know. I'm not sure about that. I think that there is.
Have you tried to A/B the test pressing against Nolan?
No. But maybe I will at some point. But I would say I wouldn't say it's worse. I just think that don't underestimate how great people who are cutting records back then, because that's all they did. Mm-hmm. There are people who worked with their hands and their ears. There was no computers involved. It's a different process. You got to remember the original recording. The original recording was, the people who made those original recordings were brilliant, because they had one pass. So you had to mix while you recorded. There was one speaker, like they picked up the vibrations, and that cut the cylinder. So when you played, you moved the speaker back and forth to send down electric charge. That did the stylus to cut this, then move the stylus, which put the vibration into the cylinder. So when you made a record, you had to set up the band, set up in the room. The mix was based on the physical proximity of the musicians.
Right.
And that's why early, if you think like 1920s recordings, singers usually are very like loud. They're shouty. Mm-hmm. Like you think about like Jeepers, Creepers, that kind of stuff.
Well, that frequency cuts right through it.
Right. It had to move the cone. That's the thing. And so I think that the earlier stuff, though it's compared to digital is really smooth. Like there's lots of benefit to it, but don't ever estimate the people who were doing mastering back then, they knew what they were doing.
Yeah.
It's like mechanics. They just knew what they're up to.
You'll never find me dissing old records, but the one thing I do recognize is a lot of the materials in the pressing plants from back in the day, and I'll use Chess records as an example. A lot of my Chess records, it has crap and dirt and dust and regrind and stuff in it, and I would
grinding it out for sure.
Yeah, exactly. And they would put the garbage in the record pressing machine. So unless it's someone that was really overseeing QA, it tended to get kind of the lesser materials. So these days there tends to be a greater focus on it, but that's a debate for another day.
It's also like the Jamaican stuff. The Jamaican stuff's insane. I mean, completely insane sounding. You're like, wow, but they're just getting it out there. Yeah, your point is well taken. But what do you listen? What is it you listen to? What are you like? What do you listen to a particular kind of music? Do you collect? Are you? I have no idea what you study.
Okay, I study a little bit of everything, but mainly I could summarize it as punk rock and jazz. Like a lot of the old Blue Notes. And then, I'll have a lot of the old Black Flag records. So, for example, the Blue Notes, they were pressed at a company called Plastilite in New Jersey, who paid very close attention to the quality. And, of course, the Blue Note guys were there to oversee the pressing plant. So that's why those old Blue Notes sound gorgeous. But then, again, I'll get some other records that are just, pressed. They're no longer in business, but Rainbow Records in Southern California, they tend to get slagged on quite a bit because, again, they use the regrind and they don't always sound great. But I'll collect. Look, if it's good music, I'll listen to it. But I tend to gravitate my ears more towards jazz and punk rock, just for the energy and the spirit.
You should investigate Danger House.
I have. In fact, we had Lisa Fancher on recently, who actually goes.
She did that reissue of the box set.
Yeah,
I had that box set.
Danger House, again, very inspirational label, and that's. I always assumed that Dischord may have taken a page from the Danger House playbook.
I certainly did, but not that I knew what their playbook was. All I saw was an aesthetic that was actually thoughtful. That they really seemed like they were only doing just LA bands or West Coast bands. It was all tidy, really clean graphics. And if you look at the original 6 original singles, were like we really tried to do like the Teen Idols cover. I mean, it was, we were kids, we were making it by hand, but it really was. We tried to make it clean. We tried to make it look good. Like we wanted to make, and Jeff was just getting his graphics, tightened up. But it was really heavily inspired by just I think for me, Danger House certainly was a huge inspiration. Now I don't know about the business, because I will say that I've never heard particularly good stories about their business, like in terms of paying their artists. That's the Dischord, man. We always have paid, and we continue to pay. In fact, I think maybe even as soon as Friday, I'll be sitting down again to write checks. I still do them by hand. I write the checks, and I think about every one of the people and all the bands who entrusted me with their music for all these years and made it possible to be Dischord.
That's a perfect place to land here, Ian. And look, again, I want to remind folks to pick up pre-order, I should say, the Dischord 200 box set. Go to dischord.com. It will only be available for pre-order up to June 11th. So you have about a week to get your act together. It's $50 for all 6 of the original Dischord singles. Again, these singles are scarce as can be. There's, to be able to find decent copies of each one of these singles as part of your collection will literally be a down payment on a house. Pick up a copy of the Dischord 200 now. $50. Comes with a 12-page booklet. You heard Ian talk about all the detail and care that they're putting into it, and it all goes to a great cause. Dischord Records. Again, Ian, thank you so much for coming on the show. It's been an absolute pleasure and honor to speak with you.
I've been a blast, and happy to talk again with you at some point. And just to remind people, it's also mail order only.
Mail order. Okay.
Yeah, this thing is mail order only. It's the only. It's not going to be distributed. We apologize to our overseas people in terms of the shipping. That's just the way it is. There's nothing we can do about that, but we've done our best, and we've each of the boxes comes in its own mailer, so we can't gang them up. Mm-hmm. We tell people you can get one box set per order, but you can order as many times as you want.
Oh, good.
So yeah, so there's no limit on it. It's just that we can't. They're already in their mailer when they come out. We're going to be it's going to be a lot of work because we will be the ones. Like there's not we are the fulfillment center. Like we don't have someone else doing this. Like the record will be made. We will print the address labels. We will drive to the pressing plant in Springfield, Virginia, Furnace Records, and we will spend days applying those things and driving that to the post office.
So you're getting them pressed at Furnace then?
Yeah.
Oh, wonderful. All right. Thank you so much again.
Great to talk to you.
Take care. Cheers.
Take care. Bye.
All right, there we have it, Mr. Ian MacKaye of Dischord Records, of course, Fugazi and Minor Threat, and just an icon of music history. Ian, thank you so much for coming on the show, and you better damn well expect that we're going to set up another session at some time in the near future to talk more. And again, just make sure you pre-order one of those Dischord box sets. I can't wait to get mine and just kind of thumb through and read the flyer and the liner notes and everything. It's just going to be awesome. I've always wanted these records, and now I finally have my chance without selling a kidney. Boxset.dischord.com. And that is it for this week's episodes of The Vinyl Guide. Thank you so much for tuning in. Please share these episodes with your friends. Put them out on social media. Tweet about them. Put them on Facebook or Instagram, or just grab someone by the shirt and just tell them in the old-fashioned analog way. Let them know about it. Show your friends how to get the podcast up on their smartphones, and they will absolutely love you for it. We'll be back shortly with a brand new episode. So until we talk next time, get out there and buy some records, people. Cheers.
That's it for this episode of The Vinyl Guide. Send your thoughts to Nate at thevinylguide.com or follow or tag us on Instagram at Vinyl Guide. Until next time, keep spinning.